Binge watch and learn on TRS Clips. I've always been curious about asking this to an actual Sri Lankan. How do you guys look at the Ramayana? Because in our country, people are 100% certain that when the epic talks about Lanka, they are talking about Sri Lanka. Internationally, there's a little dispute that could the island of Lanka have been some sort of an Atlantis-style island which sank in the ocean. I don't know about that. I would assume that it's actually Sri Lanka that they're talking about in the epic. That's what I'd like to believe. And I've done so many podcasts on the Ramayana. So I want to know how Lankans actually taught about the Ramayana, how you all are taught about Ravana, and how you all are taught about, say, even someone like Vibhishan.
See, I think it's complex. It has to be because the story is complex if you're a Sri Lankan. I mean, Ravana was king of Lanka, obviously. We learn Valmiki's Ramayana in school. That's what we study.
Okay.
So that is there very much. But when it comes to what Ravana represented, I mean, even in Ramayana, Ravana is not a one-dimensional figure. He's a complex figure. But he's has a more tendency to be more a villain in the drama. In our sort of cultural context, we would like to see him as being different. And that is where probably there is a nuance. In fact, when I was tourism minister, I tried to initiate something which I couldn't complete. Each society has its own rendition of Ramayana. If you go to Indonesia, for example, it's different. In Thailand, it's different because this is a much larger epic than just for us. So I suggested that we should annually have a sort of a competition of different forms of Ramayana to be in the form of plays or dances or what have you. Because I think we need to show those differences. Some of our nationalists obviously feel that Ravana has been misrepresented. Some people have rewritten that version, which I think is fine. I mean, that's how it should be. Yes, I mean, it is maybe more complex than here. Vibhishana, interestingly, in Kalania, which is just a suburb of Colombo, there is a cult of Vibhishana. There is a Vibhishana temple there.
Wow.
And not many people know about it. And that temple is fascinating because we believe that Lord Buddha visited Kalania himself in one of his visits to Sri Lanka. So it is in that temple, outside that temple, because very often the Buddhist temples have within it, next to it, various Hindu deities as well. There is a Vibhishana a deity there. The Kalania temple is a beautiful temple. That's another place where I get the same feeling that you get when you go to a place like Tiruketeshwaran, because you know it is special when you go there. And again, it's by a river, just outside Colombo. In fact, when you're coming in from the airport, you pass by this area. Okay. So Vibhishana, the temple is there as well. It's what we call it a Devale. Right next to this old ancient temple where we believe that, Buddhist temple where we believe that Lord Buddha visited.
Okay. I'm still a little more curious about like the Ravana part. So I'd actually like to dive a little bit into that as well. Two kind of tangential questions. One, how do Lankans look at Lord Ram and Hanumanji? And I'd just like to know the honest, input. It's okay. Because I think when it comes to subjects related to religion, people often put their own ego and emotions into it. So no matter what you and me say on this podcast, it's going to offend someone somewhere.
Obviously, yes.
But I think it's important to have these conversations that offend a few people for the sake of deeper knowledge. There's Lankans watching this. There is Indian people watching this. I'd love to, like you said, you guys learn the Valmiki version of Ramayana in school. But Sri Lankans have a slightly different Ramayana. So in that slightly different Ramayana, is Ravana portrayed as a bit of a grey character?
I think, you see, it's interesting that our own perspective hasn't come out enough in writing. There have been a few people who have done it more in modern times. And I think we should do more on it. Because when you look at it in a very at the first cut, I mean, to get to your cut to the chase on this one, Lord Hanuman destroyed Sri Lanka. That's one aspect of that. Ravana was king of Lanka. So, okay, that is one way of looking at it. I don't think the average Sri Lankan looks at it that way. There are many who do, especially when it comes to Indo-Lanka relations, some people who feel strongly that India has been oppressive use this also as an example. But that is, I would say, that is a more a fringe group.
Sure.
To many others, I think Ramayana is bigger than that.
Okay.
And we are able to, and the idea that many views can exist and many nuances can exist. So I think what I would like to encourage is that, because Ravana is not a one-dimensional figure in the Ramayana. He's seen to be a much more complex figure, and that aspect is what has to be brought out, I think.
Okay.
The other part of Ramayana, which I'm very interested in, is the Sita Devi. Because my wife and I, we visited Darbhanga, we visited the areas where Sita Devi was from. We feel that Sita Devi could be a link between Sri Lanka and India. It could be another bridge. And I always say that there are two ancient bridges between Sri Lanka and India. One is Sita Devi. The other is Sanghamitra, the daughter of Lord Buddha, who brought also the message of Buddhism to Sri Lanka and set up the nuns order as well. So these two women were remarkable women, because there's a lot has been done about Sita now. I think there's a lot of study that has been done even in India. So I feel what I'm trying to encourage now is joint research projects between India and Sri Lanka on the Ramayana, bringing these different perspectives.
Sure.
Because otherwise, you see, I don't think there is anybody in Sri Lanka, if you look at it, except for this one group who will feel strongly, and they are not using Ramayana to justify their current stand.
Right.
They are using Ramayana to support it, because they have issues with India. Now, let's say they will use Ramayana. But majority of Sri Lankans take Ramayana as it is, and they see it as a larger epic, if you want to call it that. But I think we need to go beyond that. We need to jointly study it, and then for both sides to understand Ramayana. It's a good opportunity.
Yeah.
Because when you look at some of the locations, we have nearly, I think, 50 sites associated with Ramayana. Wow. Asoka Vatika is the most famous. Sanjeevani Vatika, there are two places where Lord Hanuman is supposed to have dropped these plants when he was bringing the medicines down. There are two sites like that. There are many different sites as well. Then there are also areas where they feel Ravana had his palace, and the Vimanas were supposed to have traveled, and so on and so forth. So I think more research needs to be done about that as well. And that is happening, I think. That for tourism, because we are talking of a Ramayana trail now, and between India and Sri Lanka, from the tourism perspective, that research is being done. But what you are talking about is a much deeper bit of research that has to be done.
Okay.
And I think it can be done without emotion, I believe.
Yeah. As is the case with India, sir. A lot of the archaeologists that we've had on the show actually demands that the Indian government focus much more on ancient Indian archaeology and figure more about the Ramayana and Mahabharata. So I think that's the case all over the world. And another case which you've just spoken about in Sri Lanka, which is also similar to the rest of the world, is that you'll always find factions of people who use religion as a means to further political agenda. Am I right? That's basically what you're saying.
That is what it is.
So TRS Clips has all sorts of videos and all sorts of playlists. Make sure you explore the channel by subscribing and heading to our homepage and reading through all the playlists.